George Sodder, born Giorgio Sodder in Sardinia, Italy, immigrated to the U.S. as a teenager in 1908 and eventually settled in Fayetteville, West Virginia. He and his wife Jenny, an Italian-American woman from a local immigrant family, had 10 children between 1923 and 1943 and became a respected middle-class family in their Appalachian community. George prospered in his trucking business. George Sodder, born Giorgio Sodder in Sardinia, Italy, immigrated to the U.S. as a teenager in 1908 and eventually settled in Fayetteville, West Virginia. He and his wife Jenny, an Italian-American woman from a local immigrant family, had 10 children between 1923 and 1943 and became a respected middle-class family in their Appalachian community. George prospered in his trucking business, but he was outspoken and held strong opinions, notably fierce criticism of Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, which sometimes alienated fellow Italian immigrants. Tensions arose, and irate life insurance salesman, angered by George's anti-Mussolini remarks, warned him in October 1945 that his house would go up in smoke and his children would be destroyed as payback for George's political comments. Around the same time, another stranger, inspecting the Sauter home, pointed to a pair of fuse boxes and said this is going to cause a fire someday, which puzzled George since he had recently had the wiring checked and approved by the power company. The family's older sons also noticed a suspicious car parked along the road near their house in the weeks before Christmas 1945, its occupants watching the younger children as they returned from school. These incidents, though not fully understood at the time, would later seem like ominous warnings. By December 1945, the Sauter household included George, Jenny, and 9 of their 10 children. Their second oldest son, Joseph, was away in the Army during World War II. The family lived in a 2-story timber frame house about 2 miles outside Fayetteville. As Christmas approached, the Sauter children were excited for the holidays. On Christmas Eve 1945, the family celebrated together at home, unaware that their lives were about to be shattered by a mystery that remains unsolved to this day.
Yeah.
In a world full of shadows, secrets don't stay buried for long. Open the door, step into the unknown. This is the Lots Full Podcast.
And with that, welcome back, you fucking lot lizards. It's another episode of the Lots Full Podcast with your co-hosts, Dakota and Arkansas Dave.
What's going on, guys?
Dave, we're doing this one a little odd time. I probably should have done one of the paranormal episodes at about this time instead of when we normally record.
Yeah.
So one of the guys that listens to us at the place I pick up from, he was listening to it while he was working from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. last night.
Right.
And I was in there when he was leaving. And I asked him, I said, so what'd you think? He only got through the first episode, and he was like, man, I kept dozing off, and then the intercom would go off, and it would scare the fuck out of me, and then I'd open my eyes, and all I'd hear is y'all talking about floating aliens and glowing blood.
So we're boring, is what I just got told.
Well, you work 12 hours overnight like that, sitting in an office.
I mean, I hadn't worked 12 hours overnight, but I've worked from 3 to 11 in a prison.
Yeah, but that's you can get up and move around and shit. Here, he has to sit at a computer screen.
What the fuck is he doing at a computer screen?
Signing trucks in and printing out paperwork and stuff like that.
Oh.
The scale house.
I see.
So,
I see.
normally that's why he listens to us. It keeps him company.
Mm. Well, we're trying to make
And
another episode here.
it also doesn't help that he just had a newborn baby. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember those days.
yeah.
That's what caused this finger right here to be flat. Oh no, sorry, wrong finger.
Yeah, yeah. Have you heard the story of the Sauter family?
No, never heard it.
So I figured we would try something new. Um, well, not really new, but a little bit different. This has no paranormal aspects to it. It's just a really, really odd unsolved disappearance. Um, with a lot of the tensions nowadays, I think it fits. So I think it's worth revisiting.
Right.
But it's just really interesting. There's a lot of really odd occurrences that happen. Like I said in the cold open, you've got the life insurance salesman that's threatening that their house is going to be burned and their kids are going to die,
Yeah.
and then you've got the random stranger telling them, "Hey, that pair of fuse boxes is going to start a fire one day," after they had already gotten the house inspected.
Yeah.
Then
Makes you
you got the
wonder.
strange car.
Yeah. Makes you wonder. Whoever disappeared, because I don't know who disappeared yet. Maybe they were a spy or something.
Yeah, well, it gets odder than just being in a fire. So,
Oh yeah. If you're wondering what I'm
like,
doing, I'm trying to cover up my toes real quick.
I'll tell you right now, without getting too far into my theories,
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe anybody perished in the fire.
Okay. Well,
So, do with that information what you will, but I do not believe anybody perished in the fire.
I guess we'll fucking get to it, won't we?
Yep. You want to go ahead and get into it?
Let's get into it, because I need to get this done so I can get my ass to work.
All right. So, Christmas Eve 1945, around 10 o'clock p.m. The Sodders family's Christmas Eve was joyful. The oldest daughter, 19-year-old Marion, had brought home surprise toys for her three younger sisters, Martha, 12, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, as gifts from her job at the dime store. The excited younger children begged to stay up past their usual bedtime to play with the new toys. Jenny Sauter agreed as long as two of her older boys, Maurice, 14, and Louis, 9, took care of their evening chores, which was like feeding the chickens and cows. George Sodder and his two oldest sons, John, 22, and George Jr., 16, were already exhausted from work and went to sleep earlier. Jenny stayed up until about 10 p.m. and then took the youngest child, two-year-old Sylvia, upstairs to bed. Before retiring, she reminded the older children who were still up to finish the chores and lock up the house. Everything seemed normal as Christmas Eve drew to a close. In the early minutes of Christmas Day 1945, the first sign of trouble occurred. At around 12:30 a.m., the telephone rang, waking up Jenny Sauter from sleep. She went downstairs to answer the phone. On the line was a woman whose voice Jenny did not recognize. The caller asked for a person who did not live there, and Jenny could hear background noise of laughter and glasses clinking as if a party was in progress. When Jenny replied that the caller had the wrong number, the woman let out a weird laugh before hanging up. Puzzled, Jenny noted the late hour and an odd prank call, but she shrugged it off as a wrong number. Before returning to bed, Jenny noticed something else amiss. The downstairs lights were still on, the curtains were open, and the front door was unlocked, things her children normally tended to before bed. Marion was asleep on the living room sofa, so Jenny assumed the other kids who had stayed up late had gone to the attic where they slept without doing their usual nighttime tasks. Jenny quietly turned off the lights, drew the curtains, locked the door, and went back up to bed. The household fell silent again after the strange midnight call.
Okay. I'm sitting there just kind of rolling back over what you said. It sounds like a prank call to me, but it also sounds like somebody somebody lives there. Like, remember when I said spy?
Yeah.
Known as
So
a different name.
I have a note here. Police later traced that phone call to a woman who confirmed it was indeed a misdialed wrong number, adding a bizarre but ultimately coincidental footnote to the night's events.
Mm. Okay.
Okay?
So a drunken prank call. Got it.
What it sounds like. About half an hour later, at roughly 1 a.m., Jenny was jolted awake again, this time by a sudden bang on the roof, followed by a rolling noise. It sounded as if something had hit the house and tumbled off. She held her breath and listened for any further sounds, but after the single thump and roll, there was silence. Thinking perhaps a large object, or maybe a dislodged piece of gutter, had fallen in the wind, Jenny eventually drifted back to sleep when everything remained quiet. Unbeknownst to her, this mysterious noise would later take on great significance. The family would later find a small, hard rubber object in the yard, leading George to suspect it was a type of pineapple bomb, which is an incendiary device, thrown onto the roof. But at 1 a.m., Jenny had no way of knowing this, and the night remained dark and still for just a few minutes more.
It was rubber.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think if you're going to throw it on the roof and it's sitting there year round?
It works a lot like a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah, but a
So,
Molotov cocktail's glass and it breaks. Rubber doesn't break.
so when you throw it, it hits, splashes some of the fuel on there, which then ignites, and it keeps igniting as it rolls.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Approximately 30 minutes later, around 1:30 a.m., Jenny woke for the third time, now to the smell of smoke. Realizing something was very wrong, she jumped out of bed. She found that an apparent fire had broken out in George's home office, a room on the first floor. Flames were visible around the fuse box and the telephone line connection in that room. Jenny immediately aroused George, yelling that the house was on fire. George in turn woke his elder sons, John and George Jr., whose bedrooms were on the second floor, and they shouted frantically for everyone to get out. Both parents and 4 of their children managed to escape the burning house. Marion, 19, who had been asleep on the sofa, Sylvia, 2, carried out by Jenny, John, 22, and George Jr., 16. These 4 siblings and the parents fled into the front yard, coughing from smoke and bewildered by the sudden blaze. As they regrouped outside, George realized with horror that 5 of the children were still unaccounted for. Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, had been sleeping in 2 upstairs attic rooms and had not emerged in the chaos. George and Jenny shouted up towards the attic, calling the children's names into the inferno, but no response came. The stairway to the second floor was already engulfed in flames, cutting off any direct rescue route upstairs. In a later statement, their son John said he tried to go up to the attic to alert his siblings, but was driven back by flames. In one interview, he claimed he actually reached the attic and searched, but he later changed his account to say he only called up the stairs without seeing. Within minutes, the Sauter family's home was becoming an inferno, and desperate measures were needed to save the 5 children trapped inside.
Damn.
The the Sod- do what?
Nothing. I'm just
It's
listening.
heavy. It's heavy, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Sodders' attempts to rescue the missing children and to get help were met with one obstacle after another. First, they tried to call the fire department, but the house phone was dead. The line had gone silent, likely destroyed by the fire or cut. It was later discovered that the phone line had been cut by an unknown perpetrator, not burned by the fire. With no working phone, Marion ran through the night to a neighbor's house to call for help. She reached a neighbor and tried to phone the Fayetteville Fire Department, but no operator responded to connect the call. At the same time, a passing motorist on the road had seen the flames. The person stopped at a nearby tavern to call the fire department, only to find the tavern's phone would not reach an operator either. Precious minutes were slipping by. Finally, either the neighbor or the motorist succeeded in reaching the fire department by driving into town to find the fire chief in person. In those pre-911 days, Fayetteville's volunteer fire brigade had to be summoned by an antiquated phone tree system, which was one firefighter calling another, which greatly delayed the response. Meanwhile, outside the burning house, George Sodder was undertaking heroic but thwarted rescue efforts. Barefoot and frantic, George first broke a window back into the house, cutting a gash in his arm, hoping to reach her and reach the upstairs. He was immediately driven back by the smoke and flames that had engulfed the downstairs. George then ran to grab his ladder, which was always kept propped against the side of the house. The plan was to climb to the upstairs windows. Shockingly, the ladder was missing from its usual spot and nowhere to be found in the dark yard. The next day, that same ladder would be found ditched in a ravine 75 feet away from the Sauter home.
This
Not
this
giving do what?
this is sound more and more intentional. Like somebody.
Suspicious. Hmm.
Well, I mean, like you said, you had some weird happenings already. Then all of a sudden, the house goes up. Can't get a hold of the fire department. The ladder's not where it's supposed to be. Phone lines
Hmm.
cut. This is an
Hmm.
assassination attempt.
Yeah, yeah. That's the one aspect of it that everybody agrees on. Literally everybody that has looked into this case agrees this was an assassination attempt. Beyond that, nobody can agree.
Yeah.
Not giving up, George sprinted to his work trucks. He had two coal delivery trucks parked nearby. He hoped to drive a truck up to the house and climb on its roof to reach the upper windows. Both trucks had been working perfectly the day before, but now neither truck would start. Despite George's frantic attempts to crank the engines, the trucks had been mysteriously disabled, possibly tampered with. One theory was that the thief who cut the phone line might have also sabotaged the vehicles. As another resort, the family tried to scoop water from a rain barrel to douse the flames, but the winter cold had frozen the water solid. Every conceivable rescue plan was being defeated. No phone, no ladder, no vehicles, no water.
Yeah.
Within about 45 minutes of the fire's outbreak, the Sauter home was consumed. George, Jenny, and the other four children could only watch in anguish as the house collapsed into a heap of burning timbers around 2 a.m. In that short span, the two-story house was reduced to a pile of ashes and charred rubble. 5 children had been in the upstairs bedroom, and the surviving family members could only assume the worst, that those 5 had tragically perished in the blaze. When no signs of the missing children appeared outside, George and Jenny were convinced that they had been trapped inside. They were grief-stricken and also baffled by the cascade of strange failures that prevented a rescue.
But
Okay.
here's something I don't understand. And you brought this up. You would think there'd be accounts of people screaming.
Possibly, or in the panic, nobody heard it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get an adrenaline jump or an adrenaline dump like that, you get tunnel vision,
Yeah.
your hearing goes away.
Well, not necessarily. Especially if you're calling out trying to listen.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So it kind of makes me think, like you said, that maybe nobody actually died in the fire.
hmm Fayetteville's fire department was only about 2 miles away, but because it was a volunteer crew and it was the middle of the night on Christmas, the response was disastrously slow. Due to the wartime manpower shortage and the inefficient phone tree alert system, firefighters did not arrive until approximately 8 a.m. on Christmas morning, a full 7 hours after the fire had started. Fire Chief F.J. Morris later cited that he couldn't drive the fire truck and had to wait until someone who could drive was located. By the time the fire crew reached the Sauter property, there was little left to save. This house had burned itself out and was now a smoking pile of ash and embers. Family and neighbors had been up all night, helplessly standing vigil in the cold, and the 5 children were still missing. The firefighters conducted a brief and superficial search of the ruins. Notably, one of the firefighters on scene was Jenny Sodder's brother, who helped in the effort. The men searched the basement area, which was essentially all that remained of the house. They expected to find human remains of the 5 children, given that the fire had raged through the night. By 10 a.m., Chief Morris told the Sodders that no bones or bodies had been found in the ashes. This astonished the family. Even if the children had died in the fire, there should have been some skeletal remains. According to later accounts, the firefighter search was cursory at best, perhaps owing to the intense heat or the minimal manpower. And some witnesses claimed a few bone fragments or organ pieces were found, but quietly disposed of. Chief Morris, however, was confident no recognizable remains were present and hypothesized that the blades had burned hot enough to completely cremate all 5 children's bodies. This explanation would soon be called into question by experts, but on Christmas Day, 1945, it was the only answer authorities offered to the grieving Sauter family.
Hmm.
I'm going to look
Sorry, I'm
something up
glitching
real quick.
out a little bit for whatever reason.
I'm looking something.
Well, here's the
In order
thing.
to cremate the body fully, the fire would have had to reach between 1400 and 1800 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is possible in a house fire. But the question is, how
A
long would
house
that?
fire burns 1000 to 2000 degrees. Specifically, typical temperatures can be between 1100 to 1600 degrees. So it is possible.
Yeah. I mean,
By me, do what?
I'm about to say, if you think about it, they're upstairs. Okay. The house.
Heat rise.
Well, I mean, yeah, the heat's going to rise. What's going to happen is the house is going to collapse in on itself like this and everything. So which means everything that was upstairs now goes to the middle as
Yeah,
everything folds on top. So I mean, it's possible,
yeah.
but even in crematoriums, do you know how that happens? How they do complete cremation?
Hmm.
They literally stick you in a furnace, cook you, okay, so there's nothing but ashes left, okay, but mostly there's bones left. And they take those bones and stick it through a grinder, grind the rest of you up,
Crush.
and then put you in the rest of your ashes.
Yeah.
Like, not to be like,
No, these are topics that have to be had during an investigation into this topic, into
yeah,
this case, you know? Um, so what I'm getting from that is that it would have had, like, you would have still found bone.
Yeah. Unless it's a
By
long, sustained fire.
yeah. By mid-morning on December 25th, the fire was out and nothing remained of the Sauter home but charred rubble. The fire department, having found no definitive remains, departed with the belief that the 5 missing children had died in the fire. Chief Morris suggested the lack of remains was due to the fire's extreme heat, claiming it must have incinerated the bodies completely. A state police inspector came to examine the scene that day and attributed the fire to a faulty wiring in the house, specifically in the area of George's office where Jenny had seen flames. George Sodder was advised by the fire chief to leave the site undisturbed for a more thorough investigation by state authorities. However, by December 29th, only 4 days had passed and no further investigation was in progress. George's anguish and frustration led him to bulldoze 5 feet of dirt over the ashes to create a makeshift memorial for his lost children. He could not bear the sight of the blackened ruin any longer. This burial of the site, done so quickly, unfortunately also buried any remaining evidence that might have still been in the debris. The coroner's office convened an inquest and by the next day officially ruled the fire an accident caused by malfunctioning wiring. In a chilling twist, one of the jurors on that coroner's inquest was the very same insurance salesman who had threatened George that his house would burn and his children would be destroyed in retribution for his anti-Mussolini stance. Despite this conflict of interest, the inquest findings stood. Death certificates for the 5 children were issued on December 30th, 1945, citing the causes of death as fire or suffocation. A funeral for the 5 was held on January 2nd, 1946, though George and Jenny were too grief-stricken to attend. Their surviving children went in their stead. Although the official conclusion was that the Sauter children had died in a tragic accidental fire, George and Jenny were not completely convinced. In the immediate aftermath, as the new year 1946 dawned, nagging doubts and puzzling anomalies, God, that's a hard word, began to consume them. The Sauter family's real quest for answers was only beginning.
Okay. So what's making them think that the kids might still be alive?
Well, trying to put myself in that position, if it was my kid, unless I see a body, I'm not going to accept it.
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. I get that to a point.
In the weeks and months after the fire, George and Jenny Sauter started to question the official story. They couldn't ignore the strange coincidences surrounding the fire. Hang on, I'm gonna. It's Laotian midget porn. Get it right. So, apologize for that, folks. I don't know what the fuck just happened. That was weird. My whole screen went black, and then the camera wouldn't record.
Our FBI agents are on to us finally.
Took them long enough.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start this section over because I don't remember where I was.
Right.
In the weeks and months after the fire, George and Jenny Sauter started to question the official story. They couldn't ignore the strange circumstances surrounding the fire and the absence of remains. One of the first things Jenny pondered was why, if the fire was caused by an electrical issue, the household Christmas lights were still on in the early stages of the fire. Normally, an electrical fire would have knocked out power early, darkening the house. Witnesses did recall seeing the lights on while the house was burning, which seemed inconsistent with an electrical fire. Then there was the matter of the missing ladder, found the next day thrown down an embankment 75 feet away. How and why did it end up there if not deliberately moved? Next, a telephone repairman examined the overhead lines and informed the Sodders that their phone line had not been burned by the fire at all, but was cut. The cut was clean and high up the pole, suggesting it was cut by someone who had climbed 14 feet and reached out a few feet to slice it. This discovery aligned with a report from neighbors on the night of the fire that a man was seen stealing a block and tackle device from the Sauter property around the time the fire started. Authorities later identified and arrested this man, a local named Lonnie Johnson, for the theft. He admitted to stealing the block and tackle and also admitted cutting the phone line, claiming he thought it was a power line and saying he had simply wanted to disable any electricity while he stole, which was an odd excuse. Importantly, Johnson denied having anything to do with the fire itself, and no evidence ever directly linked him to starting it. Why a petty thief would climb a utility pole in the dead of night to cut a line at the Sauter house remains unexplained, leaving room for doubt about his whole role in the incident. Jenny Sauter also found it hard to accept that the 5 healthy children would be completely cremated in a house fire in just 45 minutes without leaving any bones. Seeking answers, she conducted her own experiments by burning animal bones to see if a fire would obliterate them. In each case, bones remained in the ashes. Furthermore, the family noticed that many household appliances were found in the rubble partially intact, and the tin roof of the house had collapsed in relatively recognizable pieces. This made Chief Morris's assertion that the fire had utterly destroyed all human bone seem implausible to the Sodders. Jenny even consulted an employee at a local crematorium who told her that even at 2,000 degrees for 2 hours, bones do not entirely burn to ash. The Sauter home had been destroyed in about half an hour to an hour, and likely did not burn nearly as hot as a crematorium. These facts bolstered the family's suspicion that something else happened to their missing children.
Okay, now I've got a theory.
Okay.
Children remains not found. Okay, ladders in a ravine, 75 foot away, whatever. What I'm thinking is a person climbed up a ladder through the window. Okay, there's the banging sound that you heard.
Mm-hmm.
Gets the children out of bed, goes down the ladder, and then sets the house ablaze.
Mm-hmm. I really like the way you're thinking. You know why I really like the way you're thinking?
Because that's what that's what your thought process is too, ain't it?
Mm-hmm. That's going along with my theory. Around 1947, after 2 fruitless years pleading with local authorities for more action, George and Jenny Sauter appealed to federal investigators. They wrote the FBI and personally received a reply from Director J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover expressed that while he would like to help, it was a local matter and outside the FBI's jurisdiction. However, he did say he would direct agents to assist if the local authorities invited federal help. The Sodders did persuade some FBI agents to look into the case, but the Fayetteville police and fire departments refused to give permission, firmly maintaining that the case was not a kidnapping and thus not in FBI purview. With official channels blocked, Sodders turned to private investigators and other means. George Sodder hired a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley to dig deeper into the mystery. Tinsley unearthed some disturbing information. He learned that the man who had threatened George, the life insurance salesman, served on the coroner's jury that ruled the fire an accident. An obvious conflict of interest that suggested a possible cover-up or at least a biased conclusion. Tinsley also heard a bizarre rumor about Fire Chief F.J. Morris. Supposedly, Morris confided to a local minister that he had found some kind of human remains in the ashes, a heart or some kind of internal organ, and had secretly buried it in a box at the scene. The motive for this secrecy, the story went, was that Morris hoped to quiet the Sauter suspicions by later discovering some remains and calling off the search. Upon hearing this, the Sodders persuaded Morris to show them where he'd buried this supposed discovery. Together, they dug up a box from the rubble, and inside was indeed a piece of something, a fresh beef liver, completely untouched by fire. It contained no human tissue at all. Confronted with this, Chief Morris admitted the truth. He had buried the liver himself in the rubble, hoping to placate the family by producing a false organ and convincing them the children had died in the fire. This shocking deception only strengthened the Sodders' resolve to keep investigating.
So, okay, here's the next theory.
Mm-hmm.
Children are kidnapped. Okay. And there's been some money greasing some wheels in town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the insurance guy. Hush, Millie. Hush. Sorry, dogs are yelling. Insurance guy's probably an Italian spy.
Okay.
Is what I'm getting, or he's at least got connections, because he's got a problem with Mr. Sauter talking shit about Mussolini.
Mm-hmm.
So that's weird there. Kidnaps them. I'm assuming at this time we got planes, so it's either probably had fake identification made for these 5 kids and flown them back to Italy, where then they were brainwashed, I would assume, or shipped back.
Yeah.
But I can't prove either one.
Oh, it's going to get weirder, dude. It's going to get weirder.
You're completely glitched out.
I said it's going to get weirder.
Yeah.
I think we'll finish this section and then we'll call it for today.
Okay.
And if we can, Sunday we'll record part 2. If not, we'll figure it out. But
Yeah,
we'll get part 2 out next week. Okay?
Yeah. That's fine. We'll get it figured out.
Yeah. So after this section, we go into things that developed later. This is all stuff in the months and years right after the fire. Then everything after it's happened years down the road.
Okay.
And that's where it gets fucking wild.
All right. Well, hit me with the rest of your pet shark here.
Yeah. In 1949, with the mystery still unsolved, the Sauter family undertook a new, more systematic search at the home site. They brought in a pathologist from Washington, D.C., Dr. Oscar B. Hunter, to conduct a thorough excavation of the site. Through his digs, several artifacts were recovered from the earth that had been bulldozed over the basement. They found coins, a partially burned dictionary, and some shards of what looked like human vertebrae. These bone fragments were sent to the Smithsonian Institute for expert analysis, where they disappeared along with the giant bones. I added that last part.
Yeah.
The Smithsonian's report on the bones concluded that they were human lumbar vertebrae, all from the same person. Crucially, the age of that individual at death was estimated to be around 16 to 17 years old based on bone development. The older missing Sauter child, Maurice, was only 14, and while an advanced 14-year-old could possibly have bones skirting the lower edge of that range, the report noted it was not likely these were the bones of a 14-year-old. Moreover, these vertebrae showed no evidence of exposure to fire. The report pointed out that it was extremely strange that no other bones were found in a careful excavation, when one would expect a full skeleton's worth if 5 children had died in the blaze. The Smithsonian experts concluded the bones were most likely brought in with the fill dirt that George had used to backfill the basement, rather than belonging to any of the missing Sauter children. In other words, the excavation yielded no evidence at all that the 5 children died there. This independent scientific finding received some attention. It prompted state authorities in Charleston to hold 2 hearings on the case in the early 1950s. However, Governor Okie L. Pattison and the West Virginia State Police Superintendent ultimately told the Sodders the case was hopeless. In 1950, they officially closed the Sauter file and advised the family to drop the matter. Undeterred, the Sodders carried on with their own quest, turning to the public for help. And that's where we'll pick up next week. What you think so far, Dave?
Okay, so sounds like to me we've got.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. Good.
yeah,
I
we're good
started getting
now.
a phone call. We most definitely have a kidnapping. Is what it sounds like to me. There's somebody greasing the wheels of authorities in town. Okay, and with all the coincidences, as Gibb would say, there's never such thing as a coincidence. Um, you have the police chief that couldn't drive the fire truck, so I'm assuming he's drunk. He's probably drunk because, well, hey, I just helped kidnap a family. 2, nobody could get a hold of dispatch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming at this time you had switchboards because we're in the 40s. Um, so there's that. Um, the police don't want to investigate, so that's telling me there's probably a cover up there. You have one guy that's an insurance person that has a problem with you talking shit about Mussolini, which we all know Mussolini is a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like my theory still stands. Grabs the ladder, goes to the window, kidnaps the kids, makes them go down the ladder, takes the ladder, puts it in the ditch, and then probably, I think, ships them back to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be by plane or boat.
Uh-huh. 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 Dave? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Continue. Continue.
So, now, I'm assuming by the way you're acting, there's probably going to be some evidence in part 2 that when we
Oh,
talk
no,
about.
absolutely. No evidence to show that they went back to Italy or anything like that.
Yeah. Um,
But this community they lived in, the small area around their house, it was primarily all people of Italian descent that had moved there. There were some rumors of Italian mafia in the area.
okay, then we're talking. Okay, they get shipped to New York.
Well, no, I personally believe they got shipped to Italy,
Yeah.
but there's no evidence of that part. Now, we will get into it next week, but there is evidence that they did get kidnapped, did survive, and at least one of them did live at least to his 20s.
Okay.
I will also say One of the surviving children that we know made it out is still alive. And that's the one that was not present that night.
Interesting.
Joe, the one that was overseas fighting in World War II.
Okay.
I was not able to confirm if any others are still alive, but he was. He is still alive.
Well, he would have been a minimum of 18 when he got drafted.
Mm-hmm. If he
Unless,
got drafted, and if he didn't fudge his numbers,
yeah. Because, I mean, there was evidence like 15 and 16-year-olds fudging numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, put him, what, in his 80s, damn near, maybe 90s.
Yep. Yeah, he's up there, but he is alive.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't be too much help to an investigation because, like I said, he was overseas.
Right. Right. And now we're talking, and being so long ago, I mean, the facts will get skewed.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm. So,
Hmm.
well, we'll go ahead and end it there. Y'all come back next week for the finale of this when we wrap up this mystery in a nice little bow and tell you exactly what happened
Oh, yeah.
because we're just that good.
That's right.
So,
So,
y'all be
buddy.
sure to like, subscribe, give us 5-star ratings, reviews on Apple and Spotify. Go check out Dave on the TikTok. Go check out Natalie on the Facebook. Y'all don't get to check me out. I'm too sexy.
Yeah, that's a paid subscription from what I hear.
It is. It is. That's where you get my feet pics.
Uh,
All right.
all right, y'all. Well, y'all have a good day and everything, and we'll see you again next time.
I'll catch y'all on the next one. Later, brother.
Later.